Would you believe that 3,500-year-old Hebrew poems could possibly have any significance in your life today? Let me sing one for you.
Have mercy, O God, by your grace, as befits your saving ways. Scrub my crimes all away, my transgressions all erase.
I was raised Catholic. I lost interest. My wife and I attended a funeral for a friend, and I hadn't darkened the door of a church in, as I say, some 20-plus years at that point. But neither my wife nor I were prepared for what we saw there, which was a community of faith in mourning and gathered around. And I realized how poor I was. In other words, I was very moved by it and very taken with what the teachings were there. This disconnect between the Scripture and how I perceived it being played out in the world made me pray, basically. Back to my Catholic upbringing, whenever a psalm would be read responsorially in church, it just smacked of things that kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. But one day, the reading, a typical, sort of monotone, bland reading of whatever psalm as a call to worship, And I thought, well, that is fascinating. That's a song there. As a songwriter, I was interested in trying to put my newfound spiritual experiences into music somehow. Why is it that when we sing one of these, we just pull out one of the undoubtedly, unquestionably pretty lines out of a particular psalm, but we don't regard the psalm itself as a song, which is what they were. That's when the idea hit me. They're in the Bible because they were, I now know, because they were handed down orally for hundreds of years. It was an oral tradition from agrarian people. So this to me is obviously a folk tradition like bluegrass.
I played her this one. I said, I'm really surprised. This is kind of like old-timey mountain gospel. And she said, well, originally it was a Canaanite hymn, probably, and they were mountain people. Here we go, Psalm 29.
My whole goal is to make them accessible and let them speak in the way they surely have spoken to others over the centuries.
This is a great way of bringing Scripture to the people, whether they already read Scripture or not, exposed to it in a different context, and that can be very edifying.
Well, I'm a beekeeper, so when we do that line out of Psalm 19 that it's, your words are sweeter as well than fine honey, I'm always kind of recollecting what my best crop of honey was and how beautiful it looked in a jar.
I see these as folk works that are from the dirt, in a good way, from the humus.
I'm the 5th generation of my family to live on the same piece of ground and work it and farm it. And this last CD that we've put together, which is this collection of agrarian scriptures, it's been shown to me through this last project. My family's been on that land for 5 generations. They've cared for it. They've cared for that bit of creation. That it's my calling, too, to continue to care for that land in a way that would make God happy.
How wonderful to get up in the morning and your job is to just live with Psalm 23. And as Charles Spurgeon says, it is a land, the land of Psalms, he calls it. I love going to the land of Psalms. And it struck me very much like the Grand Canyon, which I've hiked a couple times. And at first you just see big features, the rim, the river, some things on the way to the river. And then you start learning about, the layers and striations, and it gets down to beautiful rock formations and animal life, and it's a land, and it's a gnarly, difficult land. There are things in the Psalter that will offend you. It's not easy. So I love it. I love grappling with it and praying it and trying to learn from it.
Sin directs the heart of the wicked.
The learning of this traditional music form in no way precluded the idea of composing new tunes and improvising. There are all these creative choices all along that occur in melding the words with the music. If I suspect that a song is coming up, to whatever extent I'm able, I will rearrange my schedule and work on it. In other words, sometimes they intrude into my daily life. The time is now to act, or otherwise this idea is going to be gone.
It's one person's sort of vision, and then the rest of us kind of come and do our part and create something new. And a lot of times it ends up being something he might not have imagined. And I think that's the great thing about working with Charles, is that he's very open to us as musicians and our ideas about how a song might sound or how harmonies might change the way a melody works. And he's basically got a melody. And the thing is, we're doing folk music. And so folk music, you don't write the music out. Nothing's written down except for the chords. And so there's a basic structure. I play the fiddle, so my part is to hear a fiddle part. And he may have some idea of what he hears, but he doesn't really tell me what to do. It's pretty much just an invitation to do your part.
The way Charles has been able to unobtrusively, I should say, present biblical themes, scripture, God's love through this music to people who both are believers and who aren't.
This setting has caused me to hear the Psalms in a different way and to understand them in a different way, much like when you read the Bible, you might read the same passage 3 or 4 times, and then the 5th time you read it, all of a sudden you get something new from it.
People are moved, and will come up to us afterwards and thank us, and that's always to me a reminder that this is God's work and not ours.
One thing it's done is solidified some of that scripture in my mind.
And my desire has always been to not get my personal hands all over the text, to try to let the texts speak for themselves.
You're always kind of balancing your own ability and skill and perhaps ego with the work that you're creating. And so I know that there's always probably an internal struggle going on there, but I think if you pay attention to the words, then you just can't help but be reminded constantly, that these are worship songs. They're poems about God and about our relationship to God and about our honest dealings with God.
I just say, if it holds up in your prayers and if this is really important to your soul, then see, you have no choice. You have no choice but to do it if that's the case. Because if you don't do it, you'll be miserable. You're not fulfilling what your heart needs. What are you waiting for? Get to work.